Hey, Adjust Teen Stress. I'm Abba Shrestha, and welcome back to our Beyond the Brain series, where we interview health professionals and experts about mental health in order to get a deeper insight of different aspects of stress and mental well-being. Today, I'm here with marriage and family therapists Danlu Li and Cindy Tang. Can we start off with Danlu telling me a little bit about yourself, and then we can turn over to Cindy?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Danlu. I am right now is a clinical clinician, actually, working in the clinic that specifically working with the population that is teenagers and then who's suffering from like anxiety or depression. And the clinic I'm working with offer that the service, including partial hospitalization program and intensive outpatient program. Yeah, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Cindy. So I am currently still a marriage family therapy trainee. I'm in my second year in my grad program. I'll be graduating in May. So my experience is probably not as extensive as Dan Lu's, but I'm happy to be here. I've had, I think, one or two cases that was regarding teen stress, but I can I guess relate to it because I'm still, I feel like I just got over my teenage years and becoming a young adult. So I feel like I love to contribute in that way.
Awesome. I'm really happy to have both of you guys here. So, as in the realm of marriage and family therapy, how do you think that family dynamics contribute to or influence the mental health of teenagers? And how can families actively support their teens' well-being?
I think as far as my observation, family dynamics definitely play a very, very important role, especially for teenagers, because they are still developing and they are still, exploring the world, right? They're still in a path of become a adult, right? Even someone entering the age of adulthood, they still need to experience a lot of challenges in their life to be able to grow up, right? So for the in this case, that teenager still in the stage that's still exploring and then not so sure, not uncertain. It's full of uncertainty, basically. Not so sure what's going on. Not so sure if am I right or am I wrong? Still like in that state. And at the same time, they're experiencing a lot of identity issue because they want to know, like, if I might, my life, does my life make sense even, or the thing that I'm working on right now, does that has any purpose, right? Because that's I think usually we talk about teenager, we talk about like, oh, I don't whatever, or the attitude of like, I don't want to care about that much, it's just because it's too overwhelming, like the growing up is too overwhelming for them. So parents or the family, I think in order to like support the teenagers, you really need to kind of have a space for them to be able to ask questions and find answers by themselves and have their own experience, instead of, as a parents, we really eager or urgent to give answer, to provide answer to our teenagers, but it's kind of against their willingness to do more exploration to find an answer by themselves. And then to the other perspective, what I observed is family dynamic actually is directly impact our teenagers a way of thinking, the way of looking at the world, or the way of perceiving things. Give you a very concrete example. For example, one family, like my one parents, they are kind of tend to be a perfectionism, okay? And then the kid they're raising up tend to be more like care about how people look at them, and then how if like the fear of being rejected. That's the tendency of when you're growing up in that kind of environment, that parents are having a high standard or pretty strict on everything, and then they put a lot of effort on making their life better, do things perfectly. they automatically provide the environment for the teenager, for the kids to know, like, okay, so if you don't meet our standard, then you probably will be rejected in this environment. So that's a kind of one example to kind of illustrate how important or how great impact that the family dynamic gonna contribute to the image of a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything Danlu just shared. And I was thinking that too, as a marriage and family therapy like field, we're really trained to look at the relational sides of a lot of our cases. Like we think about, bringing parents in for sessions, even like teenage sessions. And like sometimes in sessions, like teenagers would tell us maybe their problems, and it's like, oh, like, but I don't want my parents to know. But then a lot of it is like, as much as we want to support that space for them, we also want to encourage them to be able to have that safe conversation with their families, because it could be really helpful. Like, therapists only really see your clients like an hour a week, like at most, but your parents see you much more, like 24 hours at home and all these things. So it would be very helpful and useful when the parents are able to also facilitate these safe conversations. And yeah, just about like, body changes, or even like having crushes at school, and like what is considered safe. And I'm sure your parents would also want to know like how to make sure you have fun, but you're still in a safe situation. So yeah.
And then have you guys undergone therapy yourself, and how has it influenced your practice?
Cindy, do you want to share first?
Yeah, I can start first. I've definitely just gone through therapy myself. For the program that I'm in, we're required to go to therapy just so we kind of know what it's like to be on the other side of the chair or couch. And for me, I feel like it was really, really helpful, because I learned like the kind of the nerves of like, new coming client, like what to expect, and like how I would feel, like what makes sense for me, what type of style, all these things. And I think it also helped me realize like what type of therapist that I want to be. And there are just so many different types of therapists in the world. And just not even thinking about like techniques, strategies, modalities. There's also just like personality, like if you vibe with your therapist and all these things. So I think that all of these, experience add up, and, you know, um, really kind of help me shape the kind of therapist that I want to be in the future. So yeah.
For me, I think in my stage, because I have worked in this field for several years, and the function that I'm going to go to, my therapist, definitely because the self-care. I just fully voted, the idea of therapists need therapy. Okay, we just need therapy because, you know, a lot of stressful work, like the work setting I'm doing right now, is like require a lot of teamwork, and it require a lot of discussion with parents, and it's a high stressful work environment. It's just like that, right? So in that case, we really need to take care of ourselves first, and then to be able to provide the energy, provide the resource, provide the time for our patient or client to be able to really process those, those moments, or you are able to have the capability to even witness your patient or your client when they experiencing those hard, difficult moment challenges in their life. It's not an easy job. It is definitely not an easy job. So we need support. So even though if you already graduated, even though you already like become a licensed therapist, definitely you need to have your therapist to back you up when you in the moment that you need to process, you need to have a more clearer sense about what's going on, then they're your backup. Yeah.
And then you guys have created a collaborative Instagram account. I really like it. It's called Therapist Talk About. So, what was the story behind the reason why you started that Instagram account?
Well, yeah, it's pretty simple. I think we just got like introduced to each other through, a common like colleague, and we got to chatting about like what type of therapist we wanted to be. It was me like seeking for mentorship and advice from Danlu, but it turned into a really like deep conversation and just about every conversation through a therapist lens, and then we just thought that it would be useful to have this information and conversation kind of just shared, and maybe some other people would see our videos and relate to it, or find comfort in it and just be like, oh, like I'm not going through this alone. Because when you're a newbie therapist like me, like it could be really um what is the word, like really hard to think about yourself in all these different situations, and also like it's just, yeah, it's intimidating. Like you could be like, what am I doing here? Like what is the imposter syndrome? That's the word I'm looking for. So yeah.
Yeah, it is really just from actually from one of my previous experience that I attended a conference that is I remember it is EFT, emotional focused therapy. That's a conference, and then I was just a volunteer over there, and I met with Mark, who is also a very experienced therapist in San Diego, and he was teaching the class in the school that Cindy was in, and then he talked to me. He sent a message to me saying, "Hey, I have a student in my class, and I really want to reach out to the to the Asian therapist." And then he said, "I think you probably want is the only one that I know just getting to the field. And then do you want to connect with Cindy?" I'm like, of course, let's just have a cup of coffee. So we just get together, and it turns out like, oh, how about we just recording whatever we talked about? Because it seems like very interesting, because when we talk about, we found out like we see a lot of things from the therapist lens, right? That's kind of like special. So I like that idea. So we just try.
And then I think it's really funny the fact that you both have like the Asian American background, so it put you guys together. So on the topic of that, how do you incorporate cultural sensitivity in your therapy? And what ways do you consider the influence of cultural backgrounds when addressing mental health challenges within families?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Um, I think if you are a therapist with a specific cultural background, actually, it's something that's gonna enrich your experience that to as a therapist, because you already have sort of the experience that specifically it's not a mainstream that in the US, but you have that kind of sort of experience when you just come to the country, for example, or when you go to another culture, those experiences actually helped me to be more empathetic to people or population who experience the mental health issue, because when people are experiencing that, they tend to isolate. They tend to like feel like, oh, nobody understand me, right? They are we as human beings, we longing for someone can see us, can understand us. I think that's some universal feeling that I get from my kind of like cultural background. And then the other perspective is when I'm working with the population who specifically grown up in the Asian community, then I definitely can contribute more understanding on that part, and then I can relate more. But to the other part, like as a just as a human being, right, growing up, and then we all experience a teenager, like the definitely mystery time of your life, right?
Mhm.
And if you I heard, I still remember there was an interview that there's the people just asked around, like in the college, and then the interviewer just asked around saying, hey, do you want to go back to your teenage time? And I remember that it's very impressive for me, like every single person said, no, I don't want to go back, because that's a mess, like the most messy time of my life. So I'm like, I definitely can relate to that because I was there, right? You were there, everybody were there. And then in that way, instead of thinking that, oh, that's so messy, like I was so screwed up at that age, how about we connect each other with that vulnerability, right? So I think that's the other way to help me or support me to look at the mental health issue that dedicated to the nowadays like the teenagers life. So definitely helped me.
Yeah, basically everything Danlu said, and also just adding on to that, like as you mentioned earlier when we were talking about making of our page, I was just kind of surprised by how there's not that many, Asian American therapists out there, and like even just bilingual therapists, like people who could speak more than just the English language. And I think in that sense, like bringing in cultural sensitivity for like maybe like Mandarin speakers or just like people who speak your own, like a mother tongue, like it'd be like Korean or like, any Japanese, any other language. I feel like it could add another layer to like just like comfortability and familiarity when it comes to like in session. Like there's another part of that culture and another layer that, the English language can't share, and they can't show that. So I think in terms of that, I think yeah, I feel pretty grateful and just privileged that I'm able to have conversations with some of my clients too, who do speak Mandarin, and then they want that extra layer of support. And definitely another thing that just came in my mind is just kind of staying really open-minded. As you come from another culture, you kind of have the background and understanding that like not everybody's raised the same way, like even within your own like the big like macro culture of like our ethnicity. It could be like family culture. It's like small families, like different families raise kids differently. So that could be a cultural aspect that we should take note of too. Yeah.
Exactly. I definitely support that. And we see a lot of things, but I think therapist is really important to be able to notice all the details from the very micro, view of the to from this direction. And then you can see like how does the culture or how does the value even play in this family, and how does that being carried on generation through generation. So sometimes that's the reason I think why we need to understand, oh, is there any family history,
Mhm.
the mental health treatment, or if there is any family history about suicidal ideation. When we do those assessments, that's the reason that we want to know, because those are directly impacted how you view mental health and how you view the treatment itself, right? So yeah, so definitely helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, how would you define and approach the concept of general mental health, and what indicators or signs do you guys look for when assessing the mental well-being of your clients?
Hmm.
I think a lot of indicators though, if you look at someone, I think the usually, when client or patient walking into your office, then you probably want to, of course, assess what is a concern, right? What bring you here, right? What brings you here? And then that's a kind of presenting problem, right? That's what whether it is depression or anxiety or whatever else. But the other thing I really want to look at is how how great the impact that's going to impact your function as a human being. Like for example, if it is teenager, then I think the main thing for them is the school. How great the impact gonna, the mental health issue impact your school performance or attendance. And then the other part is how about the routine you have, right? Are you able to brush your teeth, wash your face in the morning? Do you like even experience that very tiredness morning, and you are not able to get up and not able to made your bed or something. So those are very basic functions that we want to look at as well. And then the other part I usually take a very closer look is your past experience. For example, if there's a trauma experience, bullied, or any passive, like any aggressive communication argument usually happen in the family. So how does your family member interact with each other when there is a conflict? And then also like financial situation, if you ever worry about money, if your parents argue about money, or worry about if you have enough to eat, right? And then also like in the school environment, if any conflict happen between you and your classmate or other schoolmate, that if there's a bully happen, right? And then also legal, right? The legal report, like, do you ever involved in anything, like any legal issue? Then that probably another indicator that state that probably you are suffering from some maybe anger issue. I don't know. So those are all the kind of indicators that we want to notice of. Yeah. Do you have any sharing, Cindy?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you covered most of it. I was just thinking on the top of my head, one thing I can think of is also just noticing like the change, like especially in teenagers. If you have like Danlu mentioned, change in routine, change in, emotions, or if you notice your friend who normally come to school happy every day, like making jokes, and then the next week they're like extra low energy, or they're not enjoying the things they used to enjoy, then maybe that could be a good indicator for you to kind of check on that friend and be like, hey, do you need extra support? Like, how could we help? And, all these things. So I was thinking that, like, yeah, change could be a good thing to notice too.
Can you guys share in your perspective in what you think in this generation's current state of teen mental health and stress is either similar or different compared to when you guys are teens?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a fun, I think this is a pretty fun question. But I think I'm gonna sound so old, but when I was a teenager, Instagram wasn't that big yet. It was just Facebook. There's not even TikTok. So I feel like in my I feel like we definitely are growing up a little bit more. I don't know if innocent is the right word to use it, but less information bombing for us when we were teenagers. Things were a little bit more simple back then. Like there was less of like, who posted a video of what, or like, what information we're seeing on social media. So I feel like social media is definitely one of the really big, like, big difference. And I've definitely noticed that in my clients as well, even with some like children clients, like elementary school kids, like they're really affected by what's shown on the media. And, not every, parents can put on parental control, but there's only really so much they could do after that. If they really search for something, then, they're learning things that you're like, you shouldn't really know this as, a fifth grader, a fourth grader. So, yeah, like I feel like social media could be a really big stress for teenagers, especially at a teenager. We're really caring about like what our peers think, our peer relation is so important to us, our friendships, and like a comment or like a joke or whatnot could really affect our mood and, our self-esteem, all of that stuff. So,
Yeah. Just echo you, Cindy. Social media is a big thing that happening. I think not only just impact our teenagers, but also our parents. Okay, every quickly. Yeah, what I see a lot of struggling over there, like parents actually a little bit addictive to their phone, right? And then just after the work, and it's so stressful, and finally I can enjoy some me time. So-called me time is they just scrolling the phone, and then just don't have the time for their kids. And then the other, like I one time I still remember, like when I went to a restaurant, and then I literally see a dad and a son, they sit together and supposed to have a dinner, and then but dad and son, they just have their own phone, like they're just kind of diving into their own world, and then there's no communication at all during the whole dinner time. I was so surprised. But it just as you said, that is a real thing happening right now, is our kiddos just cannot resist to go to the social media and to find answers, because I feel the same thing that we all experience when we're in the teenager time is we want to find who we are. We want to know who we are. We want to define that, right? So in that case, it's kind of like a root when you're growing up. It's like when you look thinking about a tree growing up and then the root over there, right? The question is always there. And then the way you reach out, the branches going out is different. And then teenager is the one who reach out and then to find the answer and to find who they are, right? Want to define that. And how they find the answer is by look at the reflection or the reflecting when they reach out to the real world. And then they know who they are by the reflection of that, from the world or from other people per se, or from the environment. So by that saying, the social media is actually, I think, a lot of times created what I said is kind of like a confusion, like not a real reflection that giving back, providing the feedback to the false feedback, misleading feedback to the teenagers. And then they thought, oh, this is who I should be, right? This is what I should be. Like, this is what kind of person I should become. But that's actually is not true, because before you even know yourself, how do you know that is someone you should be? So today, actually, I just gave a class to our kiddos that how to evaluate your expectation versus your goal. A lot of times, because of social media, because of the pieces information, it's not like systematic information they are receiving. Like you read a book or you read a paper that you know where to get the information, how they get the information, and who got the information. No, it's more like different pieces information coming from TikTok, coming from so-called scholars or whatever it is. And then they combine those pieces of information together, and then they feel like they're put all the puzzle together, but that's not true. That's a misleading image, right? So how do you define your expectation, and then how do you define a goal? Like, how do you expecting yourself becoming that person? And does that make sense that you're becoming that kind of person? And then does your goal align with the expectation, or do you need to adjust the expectation, right? So it's a lot of misquestion over there because of the pieces information is not systematically support our teenagers. So there is a misleading over there. So that's something that I think why the social media played a great impact role over there, like just worsen the problem, because if you know how social media works, like they just feed you, right? If you click this kind of video a lot, they're gonna send you more about this video, and then that's why they make money, right? Yeah, the attention. Yes, that's how they get your attention. And so I was trying to explain that to my teenager patient, but I don't know. Something that's still like we need to put effort on, I guess, as a therapist. Yeah.
I love how you guys brought the topic of social media into the conversation, because as a teenager myself, I know that a lot of my friends, like their parents have not allowed them to create an Instagram account or start social media. And because of this, they have a feeling of feeling left out, because everyone is knowing about all these trends that are happening on social media, or all these news because of social media, and they always found loopholes like about it. So it's weird because even if you don't have social media or you do have social media, there's some kind of issue. But I feel like we now know social media is here. It's not going to go away. So it's kind of like
Exactly.
it's how you handle it. So I loved how you guys brought that in. So talking about coping mechanisms, is there any coping mechanisms that you guys feel like you had in your teenage years that's different from now your adulthood, or any coping mechanisms that you took with you to adulthood?
Um, yeah, I would say there were some that I took with me into adulthood. I think one of the things for me is like nature. Like I was always into nature since like a teenager, like, getting a group of friends to go on a hike with me or go to the beach or something like that. And that's definitely something that I still, you know, still do. Like, yeah, now that I'm an adult, I definitely still, enjoy all those things. And I want to say that another piece that I added into those like little hikes or, like sitting on the beach is I definitely started to journal a lot more and, to writing down our thoughts. It could be really helpful in like helping you just figure out the mess because when you're bottling it up inside yourself, like it really isn't that healthy. But then when it's written as words on paper or even drawn as a picture of how you feel, and it could just look really silly as well. It could be like, what? Like, I don't know why I even worry about this. So yeah, for me, it's definitely going on like nature hikes and journaling.
Yeah, I think for me, I am still doing that when I was in teenager that start to have it, it was I'll call it self-talk. Yeah.
Mhm.
Actually, yeah, right now when I looking back, actually I had a lot of conversations with myself because being a teenager is very lonely because you don't feel like you feel like nobody get you, right? That's
Mhm.
really what we see from teenager. They feel like I don't think you get me, right? Yeah, so the same. Like I when I was a teenager, I also feel the same way. I feel like nobody get me, right? I feel lonely. So in that way, I developed a kind of like talk conversation with myself, and that I found is pretty helpful for myself because that helped me to kind of describe to using the description like describe what's going on right now to myself, and then where I was able to kind of um, develop that kind of observation to myself. So in that way, I actually accidentally cultivated a great relationship that between me and myself. So I did not um, to those kind of critical moment of my life when I need to make some decision that really, gonna um, gonna decide like which way I'm gonna go. For example, I'm gonna go to the U.S. or I'm gonna stay in China, right? Those are big critical conversations happen between me and myself, and then helped me to process actually the feelings I had and the struggle I had, and I was able to make sense for myself. Actually, turns out later when I learned the psychology, I know, oh, that's called self-validation, right?
Mhm.
You're making sense about that. So yeah, so I think self-talk, definitely positive self-talk, right? Non-judgmental way. And then that's actually a very helpful skill that I'm still using. Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much, Danlu and Cindy, for talking to me today. This is a very enlightening conversation. I think that I got a lot of good insight from both of you guys as like a trainee and as a therapist yourself. So I really enjoyed this conversation once again. Thank you so much for talking to us about mental health, and thank you so much for helping us address teen stress.